Hey guys, it's Dean and welcome to Manflow Yoga. This workout is the wrist and elbows essentials routine. So we're going to be going through a variety of exercises to work on your overall wrist and elbow strength and mobility. Now, this workout is a bit different from the other workouts in the essentials program because unlike some other areas of the body, some other parts of the body, we do need to use some resistance, some external resistance to effectively target your wrist and your elbows. So one thing you're going to be using is light dumbbells and a resistance band in this routine. Now, as much as I would love to only use body weight exercise in this routine, you just simply cannot get an effective workout for your wrist without using some resistance. So I actually have here some 5-pound kettlebells that are mainly a stage prop, I think, but this is just what I happen to have in the office right now. So I'll be using these 5-pound kettlebells. You can use 2, 3, 4, or 5-pound dumbbells as well. You really don't need to have that much weight to do this. You can also, if you don't have any dumbbells, you can use a soup can. So you can use any size soup can you want. If you want more resistance, get a bigger soup can. But that actually will be helpful if you haven't done a lot of wrist curls or a lot of wrist strengthening exercises. So make sure you have the equipment you need. Again, you're going to need a band of some sort, a resistance band. You're going to need one block, and you will also need dumbbells, baby kettlebells, or a soup can. Here we go. So first thing I want you to do, we're going to do some wrist circles. So I just want you to get into a comfortable seated position. If that means that you're seated like I am right now, if it means you're cross-legged or in a 90 position like this, whatever's comfortable for you, get into that and do some wrist curls. So we're going one direction. Try to keep your elbows still here. Make sure that you're not moving your elbows as you're doing this. Just keep it focused on the wrist. Going through full range of motion. And I'm basically going through about 20 wrist circles here. And then switch directions, go the opposite way, doing wrist curls in the opposite direction. So we don't do too much of this in other Manflow Yoga routines, but these kind of exercises are really good for joint mobility. So, and that's another part of mobility, not just muscles, but also the joints. All right, and then relax, and we're gonna go through elbows. So keep your elbows where they are. And we're going through elbow circles. Keep your elbows still. One way to do this, if you want, you can bring your elbows kind of tucked into your sides, and that way you won't be moving them. Just moving mindfully. You don't have to move super slow, but move mindfully here, okay? Going up to about 20 of these. And then switching directions, going the other side. Again, try to keep your elbows at your sides here. We don't want to be moving the shoulders. It's just mainly focused on the elbows. Five more. All right, now we're going to move into wrist strengthening, using dumbbells, using resistance. So whatever you have here, again, I have my baby kettlebells from when I was recording DVD workouts. You can use dumbbells, you can use soup cans. I would not go above 5 pounds to start. 2 pounds, even 3 pounds is fine. So the important thing here is we want to make sure that we're not using the elbow. So you want to be able to rest your forearm on something. If you have a block, you can rest it on a block like this. That way we're not using it. If you want, you can also rest it on a thigh. So maybe if you're in a seated position, you can do, rest it on your thigh like this. That way we're not using your biceps. We're able to isolate. Or you can also put it on the edge of a table or a bench press, and then we can isolate like that. So whatever you're using, whatever the setup is you have, just make sure that you're not using your biceps, but focusing on your circles, or focusing on your wrist. Setup I'm going to be using is using 2 blocks while working on a little bit of hip and knee mobility. So I'm going to hang my wrist over like so. I'm holding my whatever weight, whatever resistance I have. And I'm gonna let the weight go down as much as I can. So I'm basically extending my wrist as much as possible. Maybe even letting the weight kind of come down into my fingers, roll off into the edges of my fingers. And then I'm gonna curl in, tighten as much as I can, squeeze my fingers in toward my wrist, holding whatever I have here tightly. I'm actually gonna change this grip here so I can go in a more tighter. And then let it come down, and then squeeze in. And what you want to focus on here is actually the negative part of the rep. So as you're releasing it, move slowly. You can actually move quickly as you're doing the concentric part of the rep, but to really build strength and stability, move slowly through the eccentric or the negative portion of the rep. I'm just going to go up to 10 here, but really slow, controlled reps. All right, and then flip it, and now we're going to do reverse curls. So resting so that your palms are pronated or facing down. Hold your weights or whatever you have. By the way, if you don't have weights, you can use resistance bands for this, but I'd recommend using weights for this. And we're going to do the opposite. So holding, now you're going to bring the backs of your fingers toward your wrists, release them. So now we're working on wrist extension strength. Now a lot of us, if we're doing a lot of yoga, tend to have a lot of strength here already, just because we're doing a lot of down dogs, we're doing a lot of planks. But this is going to be significantly different from that. The point of me saying that is mainly that the wrist curls that we just did, not the reverse wrist curls, are going to be the most important thing for wrist health if you're doing mostly yoga. And again, going up to 10 here. All right, and then release. So again, the important thing here, using the blocks or using, resting your hands on your thighs, whatever it is you want to be able to completely rest your forearms there so that you can only use the wrist and so that you're not using your biceps in this. All right, next one, I'm going to have you hold your resistance band at about shoulder width or kind of elbow, not elbow width, but hip width distant. I'm going to have you hold a block between your elbows so your elbows don't move. And then you're going to work on, this is called ulnar deviation. So we're going to work on pulling your arms kind of away from one another, like so, and letting them come back. So as you exhale, squeeze away, and then slowly release back in. Keep in mind, if you want to make this more difficult, you can choke up on the strap or the band. You can also, if you want, you could double up the band, right? So there's a lot of ways to make this more challenging. So we're going to go up to 10 here too. And I'm really focusing on maintaining strength through the negative portion of the rep too. Not just on pulling away, but also as I slowly allow the hands to come back together. Okay, now switch. You're going to turn so your palms are facing up. So the palms are supinated now. Hold that block between your arms still. Palms face up, deep breath in. Exhale, squeeze your hands away from one another. And now we are working on radial deviation. So we're moving away from the radius. And this is going to be a little more difficult, at least for me, it's a little more difficult than the ulnar deviation. So you might want to change your resistance accordingly. Okay, and then release. All right, we're gonna go through that one more time. If you wanna do more of this, you can go through this 3 times if you want. But just for this workout, I'm going through it twice. So now we're going to the wrist curls once more. So get your weights, however you did that before. Set your forearms on top of the block. Make sure that your elbows, your biceps aren't doing anything. Release them down, kind of let the weight roll into your fingertips, and then pull them up. Squeeze your fingers in toward your wrist as tight as you can. And again, this is so important. If you're not doing any sort of resistance training or any sort of workouts outside of yoga, this is so important to keeping your wrist healthy. Can't tell you how many people I've spoken with who say, I have wrist pain when I do yoga, but I should have strong wrists because I do yoga. I'm like, well, do you do wrist curls? No. And that's why. So wrist curls are so important to keeping your wrists strong for yoga. Again, going up to 10 here, really focusing on a slow, controlled, eccentric rep. So the negative portion of the rep in particular. All right, little break, and then going into reverse curls. So palms facing down now. Hold on tight. Elbows out of the equation. As you exhale, lift up. Reverse curl. Come down. And you can see me here, I'm just kind of experimenting with these different angles or different ways of holding it so I can change up the resistance. Just curious about the different ways to strengthen here. And you should be able to go through full range of motion here. So if you notice that you can barely lift, right? So if I'm only getting up an inch on both sides, then I want to change up the grip so I can go all the way full range of motion, at least getting full extension here with the wrist. Going up to 10. So if you look up golfer's elbows treatment, you're going to get a lot of these kind of exercises in that as well. So if you have golfer's elbow, we typically want to work on strengthening the forearms, strengthening the shoulders, the biceps, the triceps. Think about everything that attaches to the elbow rather than looking at the elbow itself. And that's true for the rest of the body. All right, release that. Those are our 10 reps. And then one more time through that little band series. So hold the block between your elbows. Start with your palms pronated, facing down. And then pull apart. Get the resistance you want. And go up to 10. Again, I'm using the block so I don't have to worry about moving my elbows. That's going to help keep me honest. I can tell that I need to do these more because this is challenging. Going up to 10. Whew. All right, other side. Now we're going palms facing up. Continue to hold that block. Continue to hold that block between your elbows. Make sure that you're pulling the elbows away from one another and you're not doing anything else kind of funky here. It's kind of easy to cheat and do this. You know, maybe you're only doing a wrist curl, maybe you're doing something else, but it's easy to cheat and do the movement a little bit differently here. So make sure you're specifically focused on squeezing your arms, your forearms, squeezing your wrist away from one another. You're trying to bring that thumb closer to the outside of your forearm. And it's going to be a really subtle movement. It's, your wrists don't really move that far from side to side. They move a lot in flexion and extension, curling your wrist and reverse curling, but they don't move that much in this. Going up to 10. Whew. All right, and then release. Okay, we're done with that. Good job there. So that was a lot of resistance training, a lot of wrist work, but again, really important for your wrist health. We're going to take it down into a forearm plank now. So forearms flat on the ground, parallel to one another, palms down. Tuck your toes, starting here. Squeeze your elbows in toward one another. If this is too hard, you can bring your knees down. We're only going to be here for 30 seconds. We're just going to kind of go through a little bit of a plank progression here. Try to involve your shoulders here. Don't just use your forearms. You can also work on pressing the inside of your wrist to the ground. 10 more seconds. You can always take the knees down if you need a break. All right, moving on, plant your fist, come into a plank. Okay, so we're doing this not quite plank with the hands down, but doing a fist, doing a plank with your fist. Squeeze your fingernails into your palms. Turn your elbows, inner elbows to face forward. Squeeze your forearms. And doing this plank a little differently. 2 breaths here. Again, always the option to take the knees down. All right, and then last plank, plant your hands like you normally would. Index fingers face forward, thumbs face in. Press the ball mounds of your fingers into the ground. And think about flexing your fingers back toward the fronts of your forearms. So engaging your forearms completely here. Again, knees down is an option. We're almost there. 2 breaths. And release. All right, nicely done. We've got one more strengthener here for your wrist. These are reverse push-ups. So these are kind of reverse, I don't know how to describe them. Reverse push-ups from a kneeling position, okay? So this is gonna be a lot of pressure on your wrist in an awkward position. So we're gonna keep most of the weight in the hips here by doing kind of a kneeling position. So I want you to put your fist on the ground here, like so, kind of like we did for that plank before. And then allow the tops of your hands to come onto the ground, like you see me doing here, with the palms facing up, fingers facing in toward one another. And then push down, roll your fingers in, and press up. Okay, so you're kind of just doing these weird, kind of funky reverse push-ups. It might feel weird at first. If it feels uncomfortable, put more weight into your hips. Okay, if you want to make this more challenging, you can kind of lean forward more here. I don't recommend doing that if you haven't done this, if you haven't done a lot of these before. So you're inhaling down, exhaling to lightly push up with control. And again, most of the weight here is in your hips. There are some people who can actually do handstands like this, resting on their hands somehow like this. I am not one of those people. And you might not be one of those people yet either. So keep in mind, we want to build up to this really slowly. And we're going to do that by keeping the weight in the wrist for now. Do about 5 more of these. All right, and then stay in this tabletop position. Turn your palms to face down, fingers to face back. Spread your fingers nice and wide, and then lean back until you feel the desired stretch through your forearms. Inner elbows facing forward, fingers spread nice and wide, kind of bringing the back of your forearm toward your wrist. So maximum wrist extension here. If it feels good for you, you can kind of stay in a static position and just hold it and let it stretch. If you want to, you can kind of lightly turn from side to side. This is one way of making it a little more dynamic if that helps to open up your wrist. You can also lean back further into it. So I'll just give you about 30 more seconds to do what you will with this stretch. Keep in mind, if your wrists are really tight, you might have to bring your shoulders pretty far forward to start. As you become more flexible, you'll be able to move further back. But the main point here is feeling the stretch through the forearms. Doesn't really matter how far you get back, just make sure that you are stretching the forearms. All right, now switching that, you're gonna press the tops of your hands on the ground, finger facing toward one another. You're not actually gonna push up here, okay? So we're just stretching. So palms facing up, fingers spread wide, lightly pressing the backs of the hands into the ground, feeling the stretch through kind of the backs of the wrists now. If you want to feel kind of a weird stretch, you can also curl your fingers in. I always find that creates this weird stretch, weird sensation, but you can do that if you want. Or kind of experiment with curling your fingers in and out as you hold here. Remember, this is, if you haven't done this before, this might be a lot of pressure on your wrists, so keep in mind, lean more into your hips to take the weight out of your hands and make this less intense there. 2 more breaths. And then slowly release. And that's it. All right, guys, so that was it. That was our wrist and elbow essentials routine. Again, focus here was on building strength and mobility in the wrists and the elbows and all of the muscles that attach to it, mainly through the forearm muscles, but also getting in those counter movements that we don't do that much of in yoga. So that's why it is essential to use weights, or we have to use some sort of resistance other than our body weight when it comes to strengthening the wrist. Otherwise, if all we do is extension, if all we're doing is planks and down dogs, you're just not going to have strong wrists because we're neglecting the flexors. We're neglecting the muscles in the wrist that do this. So we need that. I'd also recommend doing some grip strength. So if you want to hang on a pull-up bar, a couple times per week, just get up there, squeeze the bar, hold tight as long as you can. You can also do farmer's carry, so hold dumbbells and go on a walk. But grip strength is really important, and it's actually been tied to overall longevity. So the stronger your grip is, the more likely and the longer you are to live. There is a what am I trying to say here? There's a correlation between grip strength and longevity. So grip strength, really important. This is the way to get started with it.